Welcome to Friday, November 4th, 2022, this Day Weather Podcast, brought to you by Cowboy State Daily. Check them out at cowboystatedaily.com or on their Facebook page. Also brought to you by Chugwater Chili, the gourmet spice of Western life. If you haven't yet, get that Chugwater Chili ordered and get 20% off with your discount code of ChugwaterDon, as there's more wintry weather coming in the days and the weeks ahead as things are finally changing seasons-wise. We certainly saw a taste of that in many areas yesterday. Here's a shot yesterday morning out of Fort Bridger, Wyoming, as the front came on through. We have a lot of images just like this across many parts of Wyoming and other surrounding states after that front came on through, bringing some folks maybe a little bit more than expected in pockets, but the heavier snow was isolated. 1 to 3 inches was very common in many areas. Here's a shot right before the front rolled into Long's Peak out of the Estes Park area. That view now is much different this morning. Now, this is a subtle reminder. This is out of a road south of Saratoga and Rollins that notoriously folks try to use as a shortcut because their GPS or their phone says, yeah, I can go through this road. It's the time of year now where roads like this are getting closed. So this isn't so much for folks who live in the West, but for visitors, everybody else going through. Your GPS is wrong most of the time on these shortcuts, so keep that in mind as more and more of these roadways, especially through the higher terrain and mountain passes, will start to get closed. The satellite imagery shows the storm system that came through yesterday all the way making tracks now into the Corn Belt and Midwest, and so we've got a little area here of high pressure and drier air coming in. Here's a strong jet stream wind pumping Pacific moisture into the Pacific Northwest. So there's a lot going on here with this strong moist jet stream diving in. Another area of very cold air over the water there in the Gulf of Alaska. And as we look at the satellite photo across the Pacific, look at this fetch. Look how long it goes. Across the Central Pacific to the North Pacific, all the way into the Pacific Northwest. So basically the Pacific is open for business in terms of feeding moisture into western areas of North America. And then you take that and you put it with that very cold air up there, and you've got yourself a stormy pattern. And there you can see the strong jet stream winds right there. Here's the trough this morning heading eastward. As it does head eastward, the collision of the cold air with the warmer air is going to lead to an outbreak of severe weather across East Texas, parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. Coming up here all the way north, there could be some severe weather. Tornadoes, not out of the question at all. We had severe weather in eastern Texas yesterday. We're going to have it again today. Fall is like spring. You have a big contrast. The Gulf of Mexico is still warm, but these cold Canadian air masses coming in collide with that, and you're going to have severe weather. So severe weather, November, December in that part of the country is typical. It happens, especially when we start to get these colder fronts. Now let's start talking about what nobody really wants to talk about, and that is the wind. Strong jet stream winds, as we showed you over the Pacific, are going to come right across the Continental Divide and into the region. This will drive heavy rain. They've got flood warnings in effect for places like Seattle. Parts of the Pacific Northwest will just get a lot of rain in this pattern, while strong winds hit the Intermountain West this weekend. We're going to see the winds ramp up later today, tonight and Saturday, especially along I-25, I-90, and Interstate 80, but Interstate 70 and 15 as well. Those interstates will be impacted, and here's why. Look at those jet stream winds. Many of these in excess of 138 to more than 150 miles an hour, streaking across the North Pacific and right across the Continental Divide. As we mentioned yesterday, perpendicular jet stream winds to the Continental Divide make it very, very windy along the Front Range, the plains, and in the mountain gaps, in the canyons and the arroyos, where the wind has easy access to. And these are the wind gusts through the weekend that we're going to see. So it's just about everywhere where the strong winds are going to be gusty. So be careful if driving, especially areas that have picked up some snow. Now, as we get into Monday, the cold, moist air here coalesces into a more organized storm right off the coast of Washington and Oregon, and it kind of sits there. So what'll happen? Later this weekend and early next week, there's going to be a warm-up. We talked yesterday about kind of a weather whiplash situation where temperatures will be up one day, down the next. Well, that's kind of what's going to be happening with that low kind of stuck there. So the Pacific Northwest and the Intermountain West will be stuck with rain, wind, and snow. Areas along and east of the divide will see up and down temperatures, maybe a few showers, but generally speaking, east of the divide, you're in a mild southwest flow here for a little bit until this low moves. And it won't move, though, till the early to middle parts of next week. Between now and Sunday, this onshore flow off the Pacific will bring heavy precipitation from Washington, Oregon. Look at central and northern California. Look at the Sierras. Look at the panhandle of Idaho, northeast Oregon there, up into Spokane, then into Jackson Hole. Look at the northern Wasatch. We'll talk about the northern Wasatch here in a minute. But even across the I-80 corridor, northern Nevada there, we're looking at significant rain and snow. Snow into the southern mountains of Wyoming and northern Colorado through the weekend, while out on the plains, there's not too much going on. This is the snowfall totals through Sunday. So you can see the further away you get from the Pacific, the lighter the snow amounts. And there's that snow we've been talking about that'll be falling in Canada. Now, this is by Wednesday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So Wednesday night into Thursday morning, the low finally moves. As it does so, this will drag colder, moist air out of the Pacific Northwest and into the northern plains and northern Rockies, while the East Coast, the eastern half of the nation, continues to be very, very mild. Look at these temperatures. These are the temperatures over a week period of time from today into next Friday. So the 30-year average, you can see how cold it is. Look at California, down into Arizona, Mexico. You're not worried about energy usage to stay cool. You're looking at trying to stay warm in those areas because of the cold weather. And then you can see the big contrast east of the divide here between the warm and where the cold is going to be over the next week. Now, this is the next batch of precipitation as that low begins to move. More for the Sierras, more for the Great Basin. Look at Utah. Look at western Wyoming, eastern Idaho, then an arch of precipitation for eastern Montana into North Dakota, up into Canada again. Then we've got this hole here where there's just not going to be as moisture getting east of the mountains. So this is a pattern that is really going to hammer anybody that lives west of the Continental Divide to the West Coast. A very active, very stormy pattern, but one that will be very, very productive to bring needed mountain snow and needed rain to places like California, as well as the Great Basin. Look at these snow totals over the next 10 days. We're going to be looking at feet of snow in the Sierras, probably in the neighborhood of 2 to 4 feet in the northern and central Sierras. You're looking at 3 feet of snow or more, probably more than that in the Cascades. And then I want to show you this 37. See that 37 there over the northern Wasatch? This is a pattern that really gets the northern Wasatch. It really gets western and northwestern Wyoming and eastern Idaho through the Bitterroot here. Then the cold air on the plains will be overrun by that Pacific moisture, and south central Canada, Montana, North Dakota going to be getting into the action. Now, you may be noticing this. Not sure yet that that's going to develop, but as the cold air gets further out on the plains, this is an area that we need to watch later next week, as that cold and snow is going to get a bigger push east towards the central part of the country. Here's the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, extremely negative. Once we get past this weekend, all the way, this is till the 19th of November, strongly negative with the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, which, as we've been telling you, is a cold signal. Another cold signal is the Arctic Oscillation, which is now trending negative as we get towards the middle of November as well. So this all adds up to a colder phase. This is the forecast all the way through December 19th. If you were to average the next 45 days together, you can see how cold the West is compared to the eastern side of the U.S. Now, I do see colder weather getting more east, especially by the middle to the end of the month. So a lot of this cold right here is skewed to what's happening now. But the general trend certainly is much different now compared to what we saw in September and October. This is all the way out to Friday, November 18th. We have a very cold pocket of air over central Canada that wants to send cold front south into the central and western areas of the United States. So we've got a lot of moving parts, a lot going on with the weather in the coming weeks. Have a great weekend. Be ready for the wind, be ready for fluctuating temperatures, and be ready for hazardous travel at times, especially over the mountain passes and areas across the far west.